Welcome to Beyond the Veil, a story of intrigue, transformation, and the unexpected power of love. Imagine being forced into a marriage with a mysterious stranger, someone who hides their face behind a veil. Would you judge them? Would you trust them? Or would you uncover a truth that changes everything? In this tale, a wealthy heir and a hidden bride embark on a journey neither could have anticipated, where every assumption is challenged and every secret carries the weight of a revelation. But what lies beneath the veil? Stay tuned to find out. David adjusted his tie in front of the mirror as his mother's voice echoed down the hall. "David, come to the dining room. We need to talk." Her commanding tone already signaled trouble. He descended the marble staircase with measured steps, the weight of expectation hanging in the air. Entering the dining room, he found his parents seated at the long table, both impeccably dressed, their expressions serious. His father wasted no time. "It's time we discuss the future of this family," he said. David raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "You're getting married, David. It's a decision we've made for the good of the company and the stability of our business." David froze, his eyes locked on his father as the words hit like a punch. "You've made a decision? About my life? Without even consulting me?" His mother stepped in, her tone sharp. "This isn't just about you. It's about the family, the company, the legacy." "Who is she?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Anna Whitman," his father replied. "A well-educated young woman from a respectable family. She's exactly what we need to solidify our position in the market." David scoffed, disbelief thick in his voice. "Marrying a stranger to strengthen business alliances? This is absurd." He stormed out of the room, his chest tight and his mind racing. The tension at the Whitman mansion was palpable. David adjusted the cuffs of his shirt as he waited in the grand hall, his irritation growing by the second. The formality of the event grated on his nerves, and meeting Anna was the last thing he wanted. When she finally appeared, escorted by her father, the atmosphere shifted. David caught his breath. She wore an elegant blue dress, but what stood out most was a veil that completely obscured her face. "David," his mother said, drawing his attention, "this is Anna." Anna inclined her head slightly, her voice calm and measured. "It's a pleasure to meet you." David automatically extended his hand, but the question burning in his mind escaped before he could stop it. "Why the veil?" Anna didn't falter. "I prefer to keep my privacy," she replied simply. The directness of her answer left him momentarily speechless and irritated. The dinner that followed was filled with polite exchanges between the families, while David silently observed Anna. Despite her composed demeanor, there was something about her that he found unsettling and intriguing. By the end of the evening, David had no answers, only more questions. As he drove home, one thought consumed him. Who is this woman? And why does she seem so at ease hiding so much? David stormed into his father's study, slamming the door behind him. "What are you thinking?" he demanded, his voice tight with frustration. His father looked up calmly from his desk. "David, we've been over this. The Whitmans are critical to the future of our business. This marriage ensures stability for both families." David threw his hands up. "Why does it have to be me? Why not someone else? Why am I being treated like a pawn in some corporate game?" His mother entered the room, her tone cutting. "Because you're the heir, David. You've benefited from everything this family has built, and now it's time for you to do your part." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "So, my part is giving up my freedom and marrying a stranger? A woman who hides behind a veil, no less." "She's more than capable," his father interrupted, his tone firm. "You'll see that in time." David's jaw tightened. "I won't be forced into this." His mother stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You already agreed to come to the dinner, didn't you? That was the first step. And whether you like it or not, the next step is the wedding." David stared at them, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "This isn't a decision. It's a sentence." He left without another word. the weight of their expectations pressing down on him. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of arrangements and mounting tension. David avoided most of the planning, leaving the details to his parents. The more they pushed, the more suffocated he felt. One evening, he found himself in his father's study again, a glass of whiskey in hand. His father sat across from him, a rare look of understanding softening his features. "David," his father began, "I know this isn't easy for you, but sometimes sacrifices are necessary." David sighed, staring into his glass. "You keep saying that, but have you ever stopped to think about what I want?" His father leaned forward, his tone firm but not unkind. "What you want doesn't always align with what's best for the family. This marriage isn't just about you. It's about securing the future for everyone." David was silent for a long moment, the words hanging heavily in the room. Finally, he looked up. "Fine, I'll go through with it, but don't expect me to be happy about it." His father nodded, satisfaction flashing briefly across his face. "In time, you'll understand." David finished his drink and left the study, his decision made but his heart far from at ease. The Whitman estate buzzed with activity as preparations for the wedding reached a fever pitch. Florists, caterers, and event planners scurried about, transforming the mansion into a venue befitting the union of two powerful families. David, however, found no joy in the spectacle. He stood in the library, looking out at the sprawling gardens where rows of chairs were being arranged. His mother entered, clipboard in hand. "Everything is coming together beautifully," she said, her tone brisk. "Glad someone's enjoying this circus," David muttered without turning around. She sighed, stepping closer. "David, you need to stop sulking. This is happening whether you like it or not." He turned to face her, his frustration evident. "Do you even care how I feel about this? Or is this just another checkbox for you to tick off?" Her expression softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. "I care about our family, David, and sometimes that means making hard choices." "Hard for who?" "Not you." Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. A staff member entered, informing them that the Whitmans had arrived for a final pre-wedding meeting. David sighed heavily. "Perfect. Another chance to meet my blushing bride." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, but David felt anything but optimistic. Standing in front of the mirror in his tuxedo, he adjusted his cufflinks, his reflection staring back at him with a mix of defiance and resignation. Downstairs, the estate was already filled with guests, their chatter and laughter echoing through the halls. He took a deep breath before heading to the garden, where the ceremony was about to begin. The scene was breathtaking. Rows of white chairs adorned with fresh flowers, a string quartet playing softly, and a grand archway draped in silk. Yet to David, it all felt hollow. As the music shifted, signaling the bride's arrival, every head turned toward the aisle. Anna appeared, walking with measured grace in a flowing white gown, her face still concealed behind the now familiar veil. David's chest tightened as she approached, her calm demeanor at odds with the storm of emotions inside him. When they stood side by side, he couldn't resist a low whisper. "Still hiding, I see." Anna didn't flinch. "And yet, here we are." The officiant's voice broke the tension, leading them through vows that felt more like a script than a promise. When the time came for the kiss, David hesitated, then leaned in to press a brief, perfunctory kiss to the fabric of her veil. Polite applause followed, but David's mind churned. This wasn't a union, it was a transaction. And yet, as they walked back up the aisle together, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Anna than he'd allowed himself to see. The bridal suite was stunning, decorated with opulent furnishings and soft candlelight. David, however, barely noticed. He stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring out into the night. Behind him, Anna sat at the vanity, silently removing her gloves. "So," David began, his tone clipped, "are you planning to keep that veil on forever?" Anna paused, her movements measured. before turning to face him. The veil still concealed her features, but her gray eyes were calm. "For now," David scoffed, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "What are you hiding? A scar? A secret identity? Or is this just some game you're playing?" Her voice remained steady. "This isn't a game, David, and I'm not hiding anything that matters." "That's convenient," he muttered, draining his glass and setting it down. "You've made it very clear this marriage is nothing but an arrangement. So, why bother pretending?" Anna stood, her posture composed as she approached him. "Because I believe that over time, you'll see what's important. Until then, this is how it has to be." David stared at her, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "Fine," he said finally, turning away. "Keep your secrets. But don't expect me to play along forever." The days that followed were marked by a strange silence between David and Anna. They moved through the sprawling mansion like strangers, their interactions limited to formalities. David threw himself into work, spending long hours at the office or locked away in his study. He avoided Anna whenever possible, resentful of the arrangement that had turned his life upside down. Anna, for her part, seemed unaffected. She moved through the house with quiet grace, interacting with the staff and tending to small details that often went unnoticed. One afternoon, David returned home early and overheard laughter coming from the kitchen. Curious, he lingered by the doorway and peered inside. Anna stood near the counter, her veil still in place, as she chatted with the kitchen staff. Her voice was warm, her tone kind. "Mrs. Hale, these pastries look incredible. You've truly outdone yourself." The cook beamed. "You're too kind, Mrs. Whitman. But I have to admit, they are some of my best work." Anna laughed softly. "I'd say they're worth every minute you spent perfecting them." David watched, surprised by the affection and respect she commanded. For the first time, he wondered if there was more to Anna than he had allowed himself to see. He left before anyone noticed him, but the image of her kindness lingered in his mind. David's days remained busy, his focus on work a convenient escape from the increasingly awkward silence at home. Yet, despite his efforts to avoid Anna, he couldn't ignore the subtle ways she seemed to integrate herself into the rhythms of the mansion. Late one morning, he stepped into the sunlit study, documents in hand, ready to tackle a complicated merger proposal. To his surprise, Anna was already there, standing by the large oak desk. "I didn't know you used this room," David said, his tone guarded. Anna turned to face him, her hands clasped in front of her. "I don't usually, but I noticed these were left behind." She gestured to a stack of papers on the desk, the same ones he had been searching for that morning. "Thanks," he said, crossing the room to grab them. Before he could leave, Anna spoke again. "You're stuck on the merger, aren't you?" David frowned. "What makes you think that?" Anna stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. "Because this clause here," she pointed to one of the documents, "creates ambiguity. It's making the other party hesitant. If you tighten the language, it'll resolve their concerns." He blinked surprise. "And you know this how?" Anna shrugged lightly. "Just because I'm not in your world doesn't mean I don't understand it." David stared at her, unsure whether to feel impressed or irritated. "You may have a point," he admitted, glancing back at the document. As she left the room, he couldn't help but wonder what else she understood and how much he had underestimated her. Later that week, David sat at his desk, turning Anna's words over in his mind. The meeting to finalize the merger was just days away, and he couldn't shake the idea that her suggestion might actually work. The next morning, as they sat across from each other at breakfast, a rare occurrence, he cleared his throat. "Anna," he began hesitantly, "I could use your perspective on something." She looked up, her expression neutral behind the veil. "Of course. What is it?" David slid the document across the table. "The merger I've been working on. You mentioned an issue with the language in this clause. I wanted to see if you could help refine it." Anna studied the paper for a moment before meeting his gaze. "I'd be happy to." "When's the meeting?" "Tomorrow." David said, still unsure why he was involving her, but unable to deny her sharp insight. The next day, Anna joined him in the conference room. The executives exchanged curious glances, their eyes lingering on her veil. But David introduced her without hesitation. "This is Anna," he said. "She's been reviewing the documents and has a suggestion that might help us move forward." Anna spoke with clarity and confidence, outlining her proposed adjustments. By the end of the meeting, the executives were nodding in agreement, their initial skepticism replaced by respect. As they left the room, David turned to her. "That was impressive." Anna tilted her head slightly. "I just want to help." For the first time, David felt a flicker of gratitude, and perhaps a glimmer of admiration. The following day, David felt a mix of nerves and skepticism as he walked into the boardroom. Anna followed behind him, her movements graceful and deliberate. The executives were already seated, their eyes darting toward her as they whispered among themselves. "This is Anna," David said, introducing her formally. "She's been reviewing the merger documents and has a suggestion I think you'll find valuable." The room fell silent, tension palpable as Anna took a seat beside David. She didn't flinch under the weight of their scrutiny. Instead, she opened the file in front of her and spoke with calm authority. "The issue isn't the numbers," she began. "It's the phrasing in Section 4. The ambiguity makes it difficult for the other party to feel secure in their investment. If we revise it to clarify responsibilities and projected outcomes, it should address their hesitation." Her voice was measured, and her points were precise. As she finished, the executives exchanged glances, nodding slowly. "That's a valid point," one of them admitted. By the end of the meeting, Anna had turned skepticism into approval. As they left the boardroom, David couldn't hide his surprise. "You were incredible in there," he said, his tone more genuine than he expected. Anna gave a small nod. "I just said what needed to be said." For the first time, David saw her as more than just a woman forced into his life. In the days following the meeting, David found himself involving Anna more and more in his work. Her insights were sharp, her suggestions practical, and her calm demeanor a steadying force amid the chaos of business. One evening, as they sat in the study reviewing another proposal, David broke the silence. "How do you know so much about this?" "I didn't expect." He hesitated, unsure how to phrase it without sounding rude. Anna glanced up, her gray eyes meeting his. "You didn't expect me to have a brain?" David winced. "That's not what I meant." She tilted her head slightly, her tone softening. "My father taught me to think critically. He believed that understanding business was just as important as any other skill, especially for someone in my position." David leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Why don't you show people this side of you more often?" Anna's gaze didn't waver. "Because most people don't care to see it. They judge what's on the surface." Her words hung in the air, resonating more deeply than David expected. Over time, their interactions grew less formal. While the tension between them didn't vanish, it softened, replaced by a tentative mutual respect. For the first time, David wondered if this partnership could be something more than just an obligation. The growing involvement of Anna in David's work didn't go unnoticed. Rumors began circulating among the press, fueled by whispers about her enigmatic presence and, most of all, her veil. Tabloid headlines speculated wildly. "Mystery bride. What is Anna Whitman hiding?" David sat in his office, staring at a screen filled with articles. His assistant entered hesitantly, holding a tablet. "It's getting worse," she said. He scrolled through the headlines, his frustration mounting. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "They're planning to camp outside the mansion tomorrow," she added. "They're determined to get a photo of her face." David's jaw tightened. He hated the invasion of privacy, but what angered him most was that Anna would have to deal with it. That evening, he found her in the library, reading by the window. She looked up as he approached, sensing his tension. "They're getting out of control," he said bluntly. "The press. They're digging into everything about you, about us." Anna set her book down. "Let them talk," she said evenly. Her composure only irritated him further. "You can't just ignore this. They're making it personal." Anna stood, her voice calm but firm. "David, I've lived with judgment my entire life. This is nothing new." Her words silenced him. For the first time, he saw the strength in her calm, a quiet resilience that unnerved him. A week later, David and Anna attended a charity gala organized by their families. It was the first major public event since their wedding, and the whispers about Anna's veil only intensified as they entered the grand ballroom. David could feel the stares, the hushed murmurs following them like a shadow. He glanced at Anna, expecting her to look uneasy, but her posture was as steady as ever. During the event, she mingled gracefully, engaging in polite conversation with the guests. David watched from a distance, surprised by how effortlessly she seemed to handle the attention. At one point, a guest approached him. "Your wife is intriguing," the man said, his tone laced with curiosity. David gave a tight smile. "She's more than that," he replied, surprising even himself. As the night progressed, Anna found him near the bar. "You look like you're having fun," she teased lightly. David smirked. "Oh, a blast." "You." Anna tilted her head, her tone soft. "It's not as bad as I expected. And you were right. The whispers can't be ignored forever." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, the distance between them seeming to shrink. As they left the gala, David couldn't help but glance at Anna again, the intrigue she sparked in him growing stronger. "Maybe there's more to her than I've been willing to see," he thought. The drive home from the gala was quiet, the soft hum of the car's engine the only sound. David kept glancing at Anna, her veil catching the faint glow of passing streetlights. Finally, unable to hold back, he broke the silence. "How do you do it?" Anna turned her head slightly. "Do what?" "Stay so calm. Everyone was staring at you tonight, whispering about you, about us. How do you not let it get to you?" She hesitated before answering, her voice thoughtful. "It's not that I don't notice. I do. But I've learned that people will always judge what they don't understand. Their opinions don't define me." David frowned, her words striking a nerve. "Doesn't it bother you? Feeling like you have to hide?" Anna's voice softened. "It's not about hiding. It's about choosing when and how to reveal who I am. If they can't see beyond the veil, then perhaps they're not worth knowing." David leaned back in his seat, her answer leaving him unsettled. For all his frustrations with Anna, her unwavering confidence left him questioning his own insecurities. As they reached the mansion, Anna paused before stepping out of the car. "Thank you for tonight," she said, her voice gentle. David nodded, watching her walk inside. For the first time, he realized he wanted to know more, not about the veil, but about the woman who wore it. The next morning, David's focus returned to his work, or at least, he tried to convince himself it had. A major project was on the brink of collapse, and he spent hours combing through reports and proposals, searching for a solution. By late afternoon, his frustration boiled over. Papers were strewn across his desk, his tie loosened as he paced the room. A knock at the door startled him. Anna stepped in, holding a tray with a cup of coffee. "You missed lunch," she said simply, placing the tray on his desk. David sighed, rubbing his temples. "Not now, Anna. I'm in the middle of something." She didn't leave. Instead, she glanced at the scattered papers, her gaze sharp. "The merger?" He looked at her, surprised. "How do you know?" "I've seen the headlines," she said, picking up one of the reports. "What's the problem?" David hesitated, but something about her calm presence compelled him to answer. "The other party isn't budging. They think the terms are too one-sided." Anna scanned the document, her brow furrowing slightly. "They're not wrong," she said after a moment. David's temper flared. "Excuse me?" Anna remained composed. "This section. If you were in their position, wouldn't you hesitate to? Adjust this clause to emphasize mutual benefit. It'll give them the reassurance they need. David stared at her, her words both infuriating and insightful. You really think that'll work? Anna set the paper down, meeting his gaze. I know it will. Despite himself, David felt a flicker of hope. Fine, let's see if you're right. As she left the room, he realized he wasn't just impressed by her intelligence. He was starting to depend on it. The day of the merger meeting arrived, and David felt a rare pang of uncertainty. He had adjusted the proposal based on Anna's suggestions, though he hadn't told his team where the changes had come from. As he entered the conference room, he was met with tense silence. The other party's representatives sat across the table, their expressions guarded. David began presenting the revised terms, carefully explaining the adjustments. He kept an eye on the other side, watching their reactions shift from skepticism to curiosity. When he finished, the lead negotiator leaned forward, studying the document. This addresses many of our concerns, he admitted. David nodded, suppressing his surprise. Our goal is a partnership that benefits us both. We want this to work long-term. After a brief deliberation, the negotiator extended his hand. Then we have a deal. As the meeting concluded, David's team erupted into congratulations. He accepted their praise with a calm smile, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Later that evening, he found Anna reading in the library. Without preamble, he said, "The merger went through." She glanced up. "I'm glad." David hesitated before adding, "Your suggestion worked." "Thank you." Anna tilted her head, a faint smile in her voice. "I told you it would." For the first time, David realized how much he valued her insight and how much he wanted her to be part of his world. A week later, David came home earlier than usual. He found Anna in the garden, tending to a small patch of roses. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the scene, and for a moment he hesitated, unsure why he'd sought her out. She noticed him and straightened, brushing her gloved hands on her dress. "Something on your mind?" David joined her, his expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said, about people judging what they don't understand." Anna didn't reply, letting the silence encourage him to continue. "I think I've been one of those people," he admitted. "I judged you the moment I saw the veil. I assumed it was about hiding something, but now I'm not so sure." Anna's gaze was steady, her voice soft. "What do you think it's about?" David hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think it's about making people see beyond appearances, about proving that what's inside matters more." She smiled faintly, her gray eyes meeting his. "Then maybe you're starting to understand." For the first time, David felt like he was seeing Anna clearly, not just as a mystery to be solved, but as a person with depth and strength. As they stood together in the fading light, the distance between them seemed to shrink, replaced by a tentative connection. One Saturday afternoon, David found Anna in the living room, flipping through a book. "I need some fresh air," he said abruptly. "Why don't you come with me?" Anna looked up, surprised by the invitation. "Are you sure? I wouldn't want to intrude on your plans." "You wouldn't be," he replied, a hint of sincerity in his voice. They drove to a nearby park, a sprawling space filled with winding trails and blooming gardens. As they walked, the tension that usually hung between them seemed to ease. David was struck by how Anna moved, graceful but unassuming, as if she belonged everywhere and nowhere all at once. When a child accidentally bumped into her while chasing a kite, she knelt to help him untangle the string, her gentle laugh catching David off guard. "You're good with people," he remarked as they continued down the path. Anna glanced at him. "People are easier to connect with when you listen." Her words lingered in his mind as they reached a quiet spot by a fountain. For the first time, David felt a sense of ease around her, as if their shared silence was no longer a barrier but a bridge. The following Monday, David was back at work when his assistant entered, a concerned look on her face. "You need to see this," she said, handing him a tablet. The headline blared. "David Whitman and the Mystery Wife. Trouble in Paradise?" Beneath it, photos of him and Anna walking in the park filled the screen, accompanied by wild speculation about their relationship. David's jaw clenched as he scrolled through the article. "They make it sound like we're in some kind of soap opera," he muttered. "That's what sells," his assistant said. "But this isn't just tabloids anymore. Some of the business blogs are picking up on it. They're questioning whether you're focused enough to lead Whitman Enterprises." David leaned back in his chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He knew the whispers about Anna would only grow louder, and now they were bleeding into his professional life. That evening, he found Anna in the study. "We need to talk," he said, his voice sharper than he intended. She looked up calmly. "About the rumors?" He nodded, pacing the room. "They're dragging us through the mud, and it's not just personal. It's affecting the company now." Anna closed her book and stood. "David, I can't control what people think or say. Neither can you." Her calm demeanor only fueled his frustration. "So what? We just let them keep tearing us apart." Anna stepped closer, her voice firm but kind. "No, David. We prove them wrong. Not by reacting to their noise, but by showing them who we are." Her words hit him harder than he expected. For the first time, he wondered if Anna's quiet strength might be exactly what they needed to weather the storm. The rumors didn't die down. If anything, they intensified. David found himself in yet another meeting where the whispers about Anna seeped into the conversation. His rival, Mark Garrison, an executive from a competing firm, was the latest to use the situation to his advantage. "I heard your wife is quite the mystery," Mark said, leaning back in his chair with a smug grin. "Must be tough balancing all that intrigue with running a company." David's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Anna's voice cut through the room. "Intrigue only exists where there's misunderstanding, Mr. Garrison." The room turned to her as she stepped forward, her calm demeanor commanding attention. "Whitman Enterprises thrives on clarity and precision. That's why we lead in others." Her eyes briefly flicked to Mark, struggled to keep up. A ripple of quiet laughter spread around the room, and Mark's grin faltered. David stared at her, equal parts impressed and stunned. As the meeting resumed, Anna's contributions were thoughtful and strategic, leaving even the skeptics nodding in agreement. Afterward, David pulled her aside. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "But sometimes silence isn't the answer." David found himself seeing Anna in a new light, less as a partner thrust upon him, and more as an ally who could stand beside him. That evening, the tension between David and Anna came to a head. Back at the mansion, David poured himself a drink, replaying the events of the meeting in his mind. When Anna entered the room, he turned to face her, the glass in his hand. "You were incredible today," he admitted, his tone grudging but sincere. Anna raised an eyebrow. "Thank you, though I'm not sure you expected me to be." David set his glass down, her words striking a nerve. "You think I don't respect you?" "I think," she began carefully, "you've spent more time resenting this marriage than trying to understand me." David exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe I have," he admitted. "But can you blame me? This whole thing, our marriage, it wasn't my choice." Anna met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Do you think it was mine?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For the first time, David realized that Anna had been navigating her own struggles, balancing societal expectations with her own sense of self. "I never thought about it that way," he said quietly. "Maybe it's time you did," she replied, her tone soft but firm. As she left the room, David stood alone, his drink untouched. The distance between them suddenly felt less like a barrier and more like an opportunity, one he wasn't sure how to bridge, but one he wanted to try. The Whitman Enterprises annual gala was fast approaching, an event that promised to be both a celebration and a PR opportunity. David saw it as a chance to shift the narrative surrounding Anna. "We should attend together," he said one morning over breakfast, breaking their usual silence. Anna glanced up, her gray eyes narrowing slightly. You think putting me on display will solve our problems? It's not about putting you on display, David replied. It's about showing people who you really are. Anna set down her fork, her voice calm but firm. And what if I'm not ready to remove the veil? David hesitated, his frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Then they'll keep talking, speculating, turning this into something it isn't. Anna's gaze didn't waver. People will talk no matter what we do. But if you're asking me to stand beside you, I will. Veil or not. David nodded, unsure whether to feel relieved or defeated. The gala would be their most public appearance yet, and for the first time, he found himself less concerned about the whispers and more focused on earning Anna's trust. The days leading up to the gala were a whirlwind of activity. Anna spent hours with stylists and designers, ensuring every detail of her appearance was perfect. Though she maintained her composure, David could sense her unease. One evening, he found her in her room, sitting by the vanity. She was holding a small pendant, her fingers running over the delicate chain. "What's that?" he asked, stepping inside. Anna glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "A gift from my father. He gave it to me before he passed." David sat down across from her, the tension between them replaced by a rare sense of calm. "You miss him." "Every day," Anna admitted softly. "He taught me to stand tall, even when the world tries to make you feel small." David leaned forward, his tone uncharacteristically gentle. "You don't have to do this alone, you know. Whatever happens at the gala, we'll face it together." Anna's eyes met his, a flicker of warmth breaking through her usual guarded expression. "Thank you, David. That means more than you know." As he left her room, David couldn't shake the feeling that the gala wasn't just a test for Anna. It was a turning point for both of them. The grand ballroom of the Whitman estate was alive with opulence and anticipation. Chandeliers cast a golden glow over the elegantly dressed crowd, and the hum of polite conversation filled the air. David stood near the entrance, adjusting his cufflinks as he scanned the room. He felt a knot of tension in his chest, though he wasn't sure if it was for himself or for Anna. When she appeared at the top of the staircase, the room seemed to fall silent. She wore a stunning emerald gown that shimmered under the light, perfectly tailored to her frame. Her veil, as always, remained in place, but her poise commanded attention. David stepped forward to meet her as she descended. "You look incredible," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Thank you," Anna replied, her tone steady, though he noticed a hint of nerves in her posture. As they moved through the crowd, the whispers began almost immediately. David could hear fragments. "Why does she still hide her face? Do you think she'll ever show us?" Ignoring the murmurs, Anna stopped near the stage, where David was set to give a speech. Before he could ascend, she leaned in. "This is your moment," she said softly. "I'll be right here." He nodded, taking her words as a strange comfort. As the spotlight shifted to him, David realized how much he wanted this night to go well, for her as much as for himself. After David's speech, which was met with polite applause, the evening seemed to settle into a rhythm of mingling and networking. Yet, all eyes remained on Anna. One particularly bold guest approached them, his tone light but probing. "Mrs. Whitman, don't you think it's time to show us the woman behind the mystery?" David bristled, about to respond, but Anna raised a gloved hand to stop him. She turned to the guest, her voice calm. "Some mysteries are best revealed on their own terms. Don't you agree?" The guest stammered an apology, clearly caught off guard, and excused himself. David turned to her, his voice low. "You didn't have to let him off so easily." Anna looked at him, her gray eyes steady behind the veil. "If I react to every comment like that, I'll never stop defending myself. Sometimes silence speaks louder." As the night wore on, Anna continued to navigate the crowd with grace, earning reluctant respect even from those who had doubted her. By the end of the evening, David realized something surprising. For the first time, he wasn't worried about how others saw Anna. He was worried about how he had seen her, and how much more he had yet to understand. The morning after the gala, The mansion was unusually quiet. David sat in his study, reviewing emails, but his mind kept wandering back to the night before. Anna's composure, her ability to disarm even the boldest critics, and the way she'd stood beside him, it all left him grappling with emotions he couldn't quite name. A knock on the door broke his thoughts. Anna stepped inside, her movements as poised as ever. "I wanted to thank you," she said simply. David blinked. "For what?" "For letting me handle things my way," she replied, her tone even. "I know it wasn't easy for you to stand by and not step in." He set his papers aside, leaning back in his chair. "You handled yourself better than I ever could have. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen someone win over a crowd without saying much at all." Anna tilted her head slightly, a faint smile in her voice. "Sometimes, what's left unsaid speaks louder." David nodded, watching her closely. "You're different from anyone I've ever met." "And you're learning," she replied softly, turning to leave. As the door closed behind her, David realized the distance between them was shrinking. Slowly but surely, they were finding a rhythm, a new dynamic built on mutual respect. With the success of the gala, David and Anna found themselves working more closely than ever. Anna began attending key business meetings, offering insights that quickly earned her the respect of David's team. One afternoon, as they reviewed a proposal together, David's phone buzzed with a notification. He frowned at the message. "What is it?" Anna asked, noticing his reaction. "A competitor just launched a campaign targeting one of our key markets," David said, his frustration evident. "They're using a pricing strategy that could seriously undercut us." Anna studied the proposal in front of her, her expression thoughtful. "Then we need to pivot," she said. "Focus on value instead of price. Show your clients what they gain by staying loyal to Whitman Enterprises." David ran a hand through his hair, considering her words. "That's easier said than done." Anna's tone was steady. "It's not about reacting to them. It's about reinforcing who you are. People will always choose stability over uncertainty if you give them a reason to believe in you." Her words lingered with him long after the meeting ended. By the next morning, David had implemented a strategy based on her suggestion. The response from clients was overwhelmingly positive, solidifying the company's position. For the first time, David didn't just see Anna as his wife. He saw her as a partner, someone who could challenge him, support him, and stand with him. The weeks following the gala were busy but transformative. David and Anna had settled into a tentative rhythm, their professional partnership slowly spilling into their personal lives. Their conversations were no longer clipped or awkward. Instead, they carried a growing sense of trust. One evening, David returned home exhausted after a long day of meetings. He found Anna in the garden, sitting on a bench with a notebook in her lap. The soft glow of the garden lights made the scene feel almost surreal. "You're working out here?" he asked, his voice carrying a rare note of curiosity. Anna smiled faintly behind her veil. "Sometimes the quiet helps me think." David sat beside her, leaning back against the bench. "I could use some of that quiet right about now." Anna closed her notebook, turning her attention to him. "Rough day," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The competition keeps pushing, and it feels like I'm constantly putting out fires. It's overwhelming." Anna's voice was gentle but steady. "You don't have to do it alone. You have people who support you, me included." David glanced at her, her words striking a chord. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe it. "I appreciate that," he said softly. They sat in silence for a while, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger. The next major company event was a press conference to announce a new initiative, one designed to solidify Whitman Enterprises' standing in the market. David was prepared to lead the event, but this time, he had a surprise planned. As the cameras flashed and reporters jotted down notes, David stood at the podium, addressing the crowd with his usual confidence. But as he neared the end of his speech, he paused. "I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone who has been instrumental in getting us to this point," he said, his tone steady. Someone who has challenged me to think differently, who has reminded me of the importance of patience, trust, and perspective. My wife, Anna. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room as Anna stepped forward, her emerald dress catching the light. The veil was still in place, but her presence commanded attention. David gestured toward her. She's not just my partner in life. She's proven herself to be a valuable part of this company's vision. Her insights have helped guide us through some of our most challenging decisions. Anna inclined her head slightly, addressing the audience with calm confidence. I'm honored to support Whitman Enterprises and the incredible team behind its success. Thank you for allowing me to contribute. The applause that followed was warm and genuine. As they stepped off the stage, David turned to Anna. You didn't have to say anything. I wanted to, she replied simply. For the first time, David felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just in Anna, but in the partnership they were building. The success of the press conference brought a wave of positivity for Whitman Enterprises, but it also reignited the rivalry with Mark Garrison. Mark's firm launched a smear campaign, targeting David directly and exploiting lingering rumors about Anna. David sat in his office, the tension in the air palpable as his team presented the latest reports. They're hitting us hard in the media, one of his executives said. Clients are starting to ask questions. David's fists clenched, but before he could speak, Anna entered the room. May I? She asked, her calm tone cutting through the tension. The room fell silent as she walked to the head of the table, her presence commanding. Mark Garrison's strategy is transparent. He's using distractions to undermine confidence. We need to counter with facts and action. She pointed to a chart on the presentation screen. Focus on the clients who've stayed loyal. Highlight their success stories and remind others why they chose Whitman Enterprises in the first place. People trust results, not rumors. David nodded, her plan sparking a renewed sense of purpose in the room. Let's move on this immediately, he said, his voice resolute. That evening, David and Anna reviewed the progress together in the study. You didn't have to step in today, David said, his voice quieter. Anna met his gaze. Yes, I did. You're not alone in this, David. We're in this together. For the first time, David allowed himself to believe her words and to feel the weight of his burdens lighten. The next morning, David stood on the balcony of the mansion, watching the sunrise. His mind replayed the events of the past few weeks. Anna's unyielding support, her sharp insights, and the quiet strength she carried through every challenge. When Anna joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee, he turned to her with an earnest expression. I owe you an apology, he said, taking a cup from her hands. For what? She asked, genuinely curious. For how I've treated you, David admitted. I spent so much time resenting this marriage, convinced it was a trap. I never stopped to think about how you felt, or to see what you brought into my life. Anna's gaze softened, her voice calm. We've both been navigating unfamiliar territory. I don't blame you for struggling. I've struggled too. David took a deep breath, the morning air cool against his skin. I want to do better, not just for this marriage, but for us, for whatever we can be. Anna's lips curved into a faint smile. Then we'll start there. The words felt like a promise, a tentative but hopeful step forward. As they stood together watching the sunrise, David realized this was the most at peace he had felt in years. David's team worked tirelessly over the next few weeks, implementing Anna's strategy to counter the smear campaign. As client testimonials and success stories rolled out, Whitman Enterprises regained its footing. The narrative shifted from doubt to resilience, and their competitors' tactics began to falter. Mark Garrison's latest move, a proposal to poach one of Whitman's key clients, was intercepted when David and Anna arranged a private meeting with the client CEO. In the boardroom, David led the conversation with confidence, outlining the company's vision for the future. When the CEO raised concerns about the rumors surrounding Whitman Enterprises, Anna spoke up. I understand the uncertainty, but let me ask you this. Has Whitman Enterprises ever failed to deliver results? She asked, her tone calm but firm. The CEO hesitated before shaking his head. No, you've always delivered. Then trust that we will continue to do so, Anna said. We don't just promise success, we build it, step by step, with partnerships that last. By the end of the meeting, the client signed a renewal contract with Whitman Enterprises, effectively ending Mark's efforts to undermine them. Later, David turned to Anna as they left the building. I couldn't have done this without you, he said. Anna glanced at him, her expression steady. You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. For the first time, David felt like they were truly a team, united in both purpose and trust. That evening, David and Anna shared a quiet dinner on the mansion's terrace. The victory was still fresh in their minds, but the atmosphere between them was surprisingly relaxed. As they sipped wine, David broke the silence. Do you ever think about how far we've come? Anna tilted her head, a small smile playing on her lips. Every day, especially when I remember how much you hated the veil. David chuckled, his expression sheepish. Guilty as charged. But it wasn't just a veil. I think I hated what it represented, something I couldn't control or understand. Anna nodded thoughtfully. And now, I see it differently, he admitted. It's not about what's hidden. It's about having the patience to see what's underneath. Anna's gaze softened. Patience wasn't something you were known for when we first met. David laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even him. You can say that again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, David realized he wasn't just reflecting on the past. He was looking forward to a future that, for the first time, felt like it belonged to both of them. The next morning, David and Anna sat in the sunlit breakfast nook, discussing the company's upcoming initiatives. It was becoming a regular occurrence. These quiet, productive conversations where they bounced ideas off each other. We need to think beyond just recovering from the smear campaign, Anna said, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. What about expanding into new markets? Diversifying your portfolio? David leaned back, considering her words. You mean international markets? That's a massive undertaking. Anna nodded. It is. But Whitman Enterprises has the infrastructure, and the timing couldn't be better. Your competitors are scrambling to repair their reputations, while you've just solidified yours. Strike while the iron's hot. David smirked. You make it sound easy. It's not, but nothing worth doing ever is. Anna replied with a faint smile. David tapped his pen against his notebook, a thoughtful expression on his face. If we do this, I want you to be involved officially, not just behind the scenes. Anna blinked, surprised. You're asking me to work with you? I'm asking you to partner with me, he clarified. You've already proven you're indispensable. It's time everyone else sees it too. Anna studied him for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's build something worth remembering. David felt a rare swell of pride. Together, they weren't just fixing the present. They were shaping the future. As David and Anna began executing their plans, they also turned their attention to the community. One of Anna's suggestions was a series of philanthropic initiatives designed to give back to the people who had supported Whitman Enterprises over the years. They started with a scholarship fund for underprivileged students, focusing on areas that lacked access to quality education. The program was launched with a community event, where David and Anna both spoke about their vision. Anna's speech was particularly poignant. Opportunities shouldn't depend on where you're born or how much money your family has, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Whitman Enterprises was built on the idea that success is earned, not given. And now, we want to help others earn theirs. The applause that followed was deafening. After the event, David found himself watching Anna interact with the attendees, students, parents, and local leaders. Her ability to connect with people, to make them feel seen and valued, left him in awe. You're good at this, he said as they drove home later. At what? Anna asked. At inspiring people, David replied, making them believe in something bigger than themselves. Anna smiled softly. It's not about making them believe. It's about reminding them they're capable of more than they think. David glanced at her, the admiration in his eyes unmistakable. You've been doing that for me since the day we met. I just didn't realize it until now. Months later, Whitman Enterprises was thriving. The international expansion was underway. The scholarship program had gained traction, and the company's reputation was stronger than ever. To celebrate these milestones, David organized an elegant gala at the company's headquarters, a way to honor both their successes and those who had supported them. The grand ballroom shimmered with light from crystal chandeliers. Guests in formal attire mingled, discussing the company's growth and the impact of its initiatives. David stood near the entrance, greeting attendees as they arrived. Anna appeared moments later, dressed in a sleek navy gown that accentuated her poise. As always, her veil remained, but it no longer seemed to dominate the conversation. Instead, the whispers that surrounded her were filled with respect and admiration. As the evening progressed, David took the stage to deliver his speech. Tonight is about more than celebrating what we've achieved, he began. It's about acknowledging the people who made it possible. None of this would exist without the contributions of our team, our partners, and he paused, his gaze finding Anna in the crowd. The person who challenged me to think bigger, to do better, and to believe in something greater. The applause was thunderous as Anna joined him on stage. She spoke briefly but powerfully. This isn't the end of the journey. It's just the beginning. Together, we can achieve even more, not just for ourselves but for those who will come after us. As they stepped off the stage, David leaned in. You're incredible, you know that? Anna tilted her head, her voice light. I'm starting to believe it when you say it. After the gala, the mansion was quiet, the sounds of the night softly enveloping the estate. David found Anna on the balcony, looking out at the city lights in the distance. You disappeared, he said, stepping beside her. I needed a moment, she replied, her voice serene. It's a lot to take in. David leaned against the railing, his tone contemplative. Tonight felt different, like we finally found our footing. Anna glanced at him. Maybe we have. They stood in silence for a moment, the cool breeze carrying with it a sense of peace. David finally broke the quiet. I don't say it enough, but thank you for everything, for standing by me, even when I didn't deserve it. Anna's lips curved into a faint smile. You've grown, David, and I've seen the man you're becoming. That's all I ever wanted. He turned to face her, his expression earnest. I don't know what's ahead, but whatever it is, I'm glad you're by my side. Anna reached for his hand, her touch light but steady. We'll face it together. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the vastness of the night, they both felt a sense of completeness they hadn't known they were missing. Weeks after the gala, life settled into a steady rhythm. David and Anna's partnership, both personal and professional, had grown into something strong and unshakable. Yet, there was still one lingering element of their relationship that neither had fully addressed, the veil. One evening, as they sat together in the study reviewing documents for an upcoming expansion, David set his papers down. Anna, he began carefully, can I ask you something? She looked up, her gaze steady. Of course. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. Do you think you'll ever take the veil off? Not for the world. Not for anyone else, just for me. Anna was silent, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she spoke. The veil was never about hiding from you, David. It was about giving us the chance to build something real, something that wasn't based on appearances. David nodded, his throat tight. And have we? Her lips curved into a faint smile. Yes, we have. Slowly, Anna reached up and removed the veil. Her face, striking and serene, was framed by soft waves of dark hair. Her gray eyes met his, filled with warmth and quiet strength. David's breath caught as he stared at her, not because of her beauty, but because of what the moment represented. The culmination of trust, patience, and understanding. You're incredible, he said softly, the words carrying more weight than ever before. Anna's voice was steady but tender. "So are you." They sat together in silence, the veil now resting on the table between them, a symbol of what they'd overcome and of the new chapter they were beginning. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the sky stretching endlessly above the Whitman estate. David and Anna stood on the balcony, looking out over the city that was now their shared domain. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" David asked, his tone reflective. Anna tilted her head, a playful smile on her lips. "You ask me that a lot, because I still can't believe it sometimes," he admitted, "that we went from strangers, barely tolerating each other, to this." Anna placed a hand on his arm. "It wasn't easy, but nothing worth having ever is. And I think we've proven that together, we can handle whatever comes next." David turned to her, his expression filled with admiration. "You've changed everything for me, Anna. Not just how I see the world, but how I see myself." She met his gaze, her gray eyes shining. "And you've shown me that love isn't about what's perfect. It's about what's real." As they stood there, the wind stirring around them, the future stretched out before them like an open road. It wasn't without its challenges, but for the first time, they both felt ready to face it together. Hand in hand, they stepped back into the house, leaving behind the past and walking toward a future that was as bright and boundless as the morning light. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next thrilling episode. See you in our next video. Take care.